Three, two, one. Hello, Khyati. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, Marty. It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me over.
Of course, my pleasure as well. So, for anybody listening, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself? What do you do?
Sure. So, my name is Khyati Bhatt, and I specialize in nonverbal communication, more frequently, what we call as body language. That's my area of interest and specialization since 2013. I started out by, you know, starting a company for senior leaders. The name of the company is Simply Body Talk, and we've been working with a lot of different organizations across the globe through different training formats, coaching modules, and I also do consulting for very specialized kind of assignments with movies, army, military, things like that. So that's a brief. And in 2019 I started a brand for children as well to help them become stronger and smarter using non-verbal communication again, and the name of that brand is QKit. So right now I have two different brands, but the specialization remains the same, which is non-verbal communication.
Have you had any favorite parts or maybe any favorite niches within body language or, like you said, nonverbal communication? Like you said, working in movies or military and now with kids. Have you had any favorites?
That's a good question. See, I think when it comes to communication, it's always about being in the moment and being able to understand the person on the other side. A lot of times, when people approach, and this I've seen even when I ask questions. Most of us feel that if I get my side correct, then things will adapt around that. So my favorite has always been in helping people to understand the other side of the communication and adapting to the same. So this can be in any area, it does not matter, as long as we are talking about humans and interactions with them. I think that's the key area that I have worked on, and I continue to drive towards that. And especially because things are going digital, we don't get to interact so much with people, so it's all the more important that even though I might be chatting with you, I might be texting you from time to time, I have to know how you are and what you're doing. And that is where non-verbal communication plays a very, very important role.
How would you say the importance of it, like you said, has shifted ever since we moved much more online with the pandemic? Of course, everybody working from home and maybe sometimes having video calls, but often even without the camera. So, how would you say the importance of it, or perhaps people's awareness of it, has changed over time?
I think we've just become more adapted to, just instead of picking up a phone call, doing video meetings. That's absolutely fine. So, in fact, we were just doing a workshop last Friday, and somebody was asking me that, I do my negotiations on the phone. What can I do about that? And I was a little surprised because when you talk about things that are so high stake, like negotiations and all, right, you cannot be doing that over a phone call. So, to coming back to your question, because of the whole era where everything had to be online, people have become more flexible and okay with the idea that instead of a phone call, you can do a video meeting with me, and I will be, fine with that. So it's helped us to adapt. Even those who are not technologically so savvy, they know at least the basics, right? So
Yeah.
from that perspective, life is better. Obviously, if I met you in person, I'm sure the experience would be much different, and we can understand people a little more in detail. But even that being said, I think the whole idea of us doing conversations face to face, that has improved a lot.
Okay, which is a very good point, and you're very right that it used to be more okay, maybe either face to face or just a phone call, but now video calls have become very commonplace and it's not really a big deal anymore. That's a very good point. Okay. And would you say, with your years of experience and study and working with a lot of different people and experts in the field, would you say that there are any key principles to effective nonverbal communication? Is there something that, okay, if you do A, B, C, that's a good start?
Okay, so when it comes to interactions in general. As a species, we like to uh, mingle, we like to socialize, but then there is a brain of ours that's always, on the alert, trying to understand that if I'm meeting somebody who's new, can I trust them, and can or will they be a threat to me? So these are two key factors that research has established are on the top of our mind. So if you can use non-verbal communication effectively to ensure that the person whom you are sitting across from or you're meeting, interacting with, they understand that you can be trusted and that you're not going to sit with a hammer on their heads. If that can be established through different kind of body language signals, then that does the initial trick of putting you at good rapport with others. Now when it comes to style, everybody has got their different personalities, their styles, right? Some of us are good listeners, then I might be somebody who will be happier to give you a smile, to keep nodding, and encouraging you to initiate the conversation and talk to me. If I'm somebody who's more of a stalker or an extrovert kind of a personality, I might be somebody who's cheerful, bubbly, wants to initiate conversation. So I might have body language that suggests similarly. But the idea being that no matter how expressive we are, less expressive we are, the idea is to be able to, within minutes of meeting, not minutes, I should say seconds, within seconds of meeting somebody, you should have that skill of just indicating to people that you are somebody they can come initiate a conversation with, and you'll be happy to converse with them. So that's the most basic that non-verbal communication can get. And obviously there are different ways of going about it, but I'm sure everybody has their own personal style that they like. So that's to answer your question in a very, very brief manner.
Would you say that a smile is a good way to start, or is there something else beyond that that's very significant? Because I've read, and I think this has been circulating around the internet, that you shouldn't cross your arms and those types of things. Have you found that to be genuinely true in your experience, or is it more of a myth that if you cross your arms, then somebody's going to see you as negative, and those types of, let's say, more stereotypical nonverbal cues?
Yes, that is absolutely stereotypical. You got it right. The problem that happens is, most of us just focus on what's right in front of us, which is maybe the face, probably up to the torso level. Nobody wants to look at everything put together. So it's all piecemeal. Either I'm just focusing on your smile, or I'm not, focusing on how your body is showing nervousness somewhere else. So those are the times when we get, these interpretation of body language incorrect. As far as being approachable goes, obviously smiling is one of them. However, just a fun fact, do you know that, the show of teeth, it's common to indicate that I'm somebody who's harmless, right? That's why even when we are afraid, you will see some show of teeth, so that from a distance you can make out that the person there, they are harmless. So that happens when either you are really happy or you are fearful of something. So that's about the smile. But yeah, coming back, crossed arms definitely does not always mean that stuff. You have to look at the entire body language to understand what exactly somebody is saying. That's what we call as a cluster, actually. Cluster meaning small signals that bunch up and you read them together. You don't read them independently, because that is what causes you to misunderstand somebody. And there are some cues to go about. The most basic cue is you just look for whether a person is comfortable or not comfortable. Somebody who's comfortable, somebody who likes you, somebody wants you to approach, they will always have their body open or comfortable, relaxed, and leaning towards you or the topic or the emotion that they are feeling. And the other way around is, when you're not too comfortable, you might not respond, or might want to go away, or you might be touching to feel better because something is disturbing you. So this is the most basic that body language can get. If you get just this rule correct, then even if you don't read like 1,000 books or 1,000 techniques, you will broadly be able to understand, where somebody is coming from.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense, and I really like that you mentioned that it's not just about one cue that, oh, okay, this person has crossed arm, for instance, okay, so they don't want to talk with me, but maybe they're smiling, maybe their eyes are smiling, and you're here confused, what am I doing? I'm sending some mixed signals, so working on it in unison makes a whole lot of sense. And would you say, are there some different maybe ways to look for, let's say, different personality traits? I really like what you mentioned with the teeth, for example, showing that you're non-threatening, that you can be trusted, that you're not a very dangerous person. Would you say that there are some different parts of the body or perhaps different cues that you would look for somebody that is maybe competent, that maybe they are feeling confident, and let's say different spheres or different characteristics that you're looking for? Or would you say it's more general than that? That, okay, if you're doing this, that means you're confident, and if you're doing this, that means you're competent. Is there anything like that that you've noticed?
Yeah. So in general, if you are confident and you are comfortable, your body will be generally a little relaxed and cool. That's as simple as it gets. We have a lot of body language that is universal, which means no
Mm.
matter what your personality is or what your culture is, broadly, it stays similar. And that comes from the fact that, nonverbal communication hasn't evolved in the recent times. It's very, very historic in nature. So even before the language evolved, nonverbal communication used to be the language of communication, to not just tell your group members what you wish to, but also to understand others, right? So that is why it's very, very basic. A lot of signals are similar. That is why I said that, when you're open and relaxed, that means you are comfortable. When you're closed and shut down, that means you're not very comfortable with what it is, right? But that being said, uh, in order to understand any personality, like what are the different type of people we deal with, we try and establish something called a baseline when we meet somebody for the first time. I'm sure even you've, come across this, that the first few minutes we are doing more of small talk. It's
Mm.
not just about allowing the person to settle down, it's also us settling down into that meeting and also understanding what the person is all about. And when we say all about, if we are doing a lot of analysis, whether we understand it or not, like maybe you are just trying to find common connects, but along with that, your mind is also trying to understand what is this person, what is that background about, how expressive are they. Some of us have these idiosyncratic movements, like I might have a pet way of telling you that, I like something, I don't like something. So those are going to be there, and that is why, body language is very wide. So there are lots and lots of different signals, but you can broadly just categorize it in this manner, that, if a person is feeling competent, you will see purposeful movements, like there will not be erratic sudden movements happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
So smooth purposeful gestures, that tells you that, this person knows what they are talking about. Then there are times when, our body language becomes a lot more amped up. Amped up could be because I'm not able to figure out what's the right thing that I wish to tell you, or I am in that dichotomy whether I want to tell you what's on my mind, or I want to be a little more polite and, not make you feel bad about something. So that those are the instances where, somewhere the words and the body language do not really match. So there it becomes difficult to understand, whether this person can be trusted or not. So that's something we don't want to fall into, that, somewhere you are saying something and your body language is, indicating something very different.
I really love how you connected that to small talk, that it's like you said, creating that baseline. And I feel like that's a very important point, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, because I feel like recently, more so, I've noticed that a lot of people mm, don't really encourage small talk, or even going into the direction of, I don't want to do small talk. Which on the one hand makes sense because it's somewhat useless from the content perspective, But it shines a whole new light on it with what you said, that it's not just about you telling me about the weather, but it's me figuring out how you behave, what kinds of cues you're sending me, if I can trust you, if I can be comfortable with you, and vice versa, if you can be also confident with me, if we can maintain a conversation. That I would say creates a whole new perspective on small talk. Has that been something that you've been developing in yourself as well? That, okay, maybe we can start with, like you said, a few brief minutes. Every single conversation, every single person I meet, is it a point that you value to start with small talk?
To anybody who's into these high stake discussions, conversations, or conversions, they will always tell you that it's that 2 minute of small talk that gives them one up on their colleagues, because that small talk is the one that most people value. Relationships are
Mm.
built because you will have understood the person and remembered back in the next conversation about that small one or two things that they mentioned last time. In fact, a lot of my corporate colleagues, I mean, people that I deal with professionally, when we speak with them, they tell me that we want to know you as a person, not just as the professional that you are. That is what everybody values. So no matter how fast paced we want to become, there will always be that bonding that we want to find with people around us, and that's where just having a talk around what's important, that's not going to cut it, right? Obviously there are times when we don't have all that time to get into highs and lows every time, but when you don't know somebody, or you are coming back to a relationship that's become a little distant, that's the time when small talk really does a lot. In fact, I've worked with a lot of people who find those 2 minutes highly anxious. That, I don't know what to do with people. I cannot understand people. So the only advice I give them is, why don't you do a little bit of small talk and you will settle in as much? Because believe it or not, it's not just about settling the other person. You also have to be settled in. Then you can talk the right things out, right? And for a person like me, I'm not too great a person when it comes to sharing everything about myself, but one thing I know is to ask questions, and people love to talk about themselves. So if you feel that I don't know what to do when it comes to small talk, or what do I share, what do I not share, the easiest is just ask a few simple questions, and everybody loves to talk, so that just gets the ball rolling, and then you don't need to think anymore. So that's how it is.
That's something that I love to recommend to my students as well, and especially looking at it in from the point of view of using a second language, one that's not your native, then there is that extra level of stress on top of that, that okay, am I using the right words, the right grammar, and so on. And a lot of people tend to have issues or feel stressed during small talk. And that's something that I always love to tell them. It's not an interview. It's not that they are asking you questions and you're just answering. You can ask them questions too, and that's okay. And that's going to
Correct.
take the pressure off of you to, okay, I can relax now. They can talk a little bit about themselves. They can, like you said, enjoy the time talking about themselves. So it's a
Yes,
win-win
and
situation.
correct. And the whole idea is, when you both settle down, the body language is going to give you a bigger cue than people telling us, because nobody is going to tell you, okay, now I've settled down, why don't we get to the point? They
Yeah.
will start indicating it because the body will relax down. There will be a natural synchrony in me saying something and you responding back naturally to it. Eye contact becomes more established, and when I'm saying something, I will see you also mimicking to some extent. Like if I raise my eyebrows, I've seen it, I've tried it out a lot of times, people start mimicking. It's not that we are purposefully doing this, but it's just that as a species we like to find things that make us understand the other person better. So from that perspective, you start getting those cues that obviously I know because my body starts relaxing, but the other one also indicates that now we are okay with that rapport building phase, and now we can get to the actual conversation. So there also the non-verbal communication plays a very big role.
Have you noticed any differences in how you interact and how these conversations and how the body language presents itself with native speakers, let's say if we think of English or if we think of any other languages that you often communicate in, do you notice any differences if it's okay, they're comfortable with the language and then they're comfortable with their body language as a result versus maybe somebody that doesn't have a very high level in English or again any other language? Do you notice big differences in their body language or by and large is it largely the same?
So there are two things to this. One is when the person is trying to, really come up with the right terminology to use to explain. So that's when the use of what we say as illustrators in terms of body language, they really go up. So illustrators are probably most of us use hand gestures, right? So these hand gestures help us to explain better what we would like to say. So at that time, what happens is because the person is not able to come up with exactly what they would like to say, and uh, you know two things happen. One is the illustrators really increase, and the second thing is you will see them become more delayed because of this. They realize that I'm not able to come up with the right words, so there will be hesitation from that perspective. Hesitation could be nervousness in their body language, or even eye contact. It really goes down because the person is trying to focus on what they would like to say and then come back, right? So that is one generic type of nuance to using native language and switching to another language. And the other type of people that I have seen are those who are absolutely certain about what they want to say. Okay. And for them it really doesn't matter because they are not very conscious of the fact that I'm not very good at my language. For them it's absolutely okay. They might once in a while switch to their native language for probably a word or two here and there, and then they will switch back to English or even another language, like say a Hindi. If they are not speaking Hindi, which is our native language, they will switch to another one, then come back. So from that perspective, these people, their body language is highly confident. So when we also work with people from different backgrounds, that's what we tell them, that as long as you know your content well, it should not matter, what language you are talking in. And if you get that bit correct, then naturally your body language will respond accordingly. So it's just about getting it right in your head that, I don't need to worry as long as I'm able to communicate. And if you're not, then body language always comes to your, rescue. You can always gesture it out and explain what you would like to.
I need that.
Yes, correct.
For sure, for
Correct.
sure. I really find that interesting what you mentioned, and I read a study a long time ago, but I remember it, and it's always something that I found very fascinating. They were doing a study and they bound people's hands, and I don't remember if it was in front of them or behind them, but they restricted their hands in some way, and they found that they couldn't really speak as quickly and they had more trouble with thinking, which is incredible because it's not really something that we consider, okay, well, I use my hands to think, but maybe quite literally.
So in fact, we do this like when we do
Okay.
the beginner level workshops, right? Sometimes these are all trainings which are done by the corporate. So the participants really don't have an option. They have to attend the workshops. There are a lot of times when these participants come in with this hesitation that, I know my body, I always, use, and I look at people. What's the whole need of getting into a training for this? So we make them do this, that just put your hands at the back. I give them a very simple activity that try and explain where you want to go just using no hands. Now this becomes a little
Yeah.
difficult, right? Because how do you do your left and right and all that? So something interesting that we've seen is the head nodding and the expressions on the face. They go up significantly to compensate for the fact that you're not using your hands to gesture. So the idea is that, body language is something that's very natural to all of us, whether we are aware about it or not. And if I restrict one of your parts of your body, you will somewhere try and use other parts to make sure that the balance is maintained. I've been in these high context cultures the low context cultures where they believe that, language is important and body language or non-verbal communication is not that important. I've traveled with them, attended meetings, and I've realized that, they might feel it's not important, but nonetheless, everybody expresses using body language. I mean, it's just about how vocal you are, but ultimately everybody is, expressive through their bodies. That's as basic as it gets.
That's fascinating that, like you said, consciously, oh no, it's not really my thing, but yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh, very interesting, very interesting. Okay. And I'd love to come back to something that you also said before. You mentioned that if you're comfortable with what you're going to say, if you know exactly what you're going to be talking about, like you said, if you've got it all figured out in your head, then it's much easier to look comfortable, competent, and to not really show those maybe restrictive body language signs. And with that, is there something that you can recommend, any tactics that you specifically work with people on that, okay, maybe I'm not very comfortable, maybe I'm not very confident, maybe this is my first time giving a speech or a presentation, so it's a higher stress situation. Is there something that you can recommend to those types of people to still quote unquote take control of their nonverbal cues and to, okay, I'm stressed, but maybe not to show it as much?
Okay, so there are a few things that generally, I recommend to people to do. One of which is just to understand the kind of varieties that can be used when you want to express. In fact, the more different techniques you learn, for example, just talking about hand gestures, there are so many different type of hand gestures, and I'm not talking about culture specific ones. Those that are universal that everybody in the world understands. So all you have to do is, turn on a TED talk and you'll see, these different powerful hand gestures that all these speakers use all the time. So the idea is to understand how much variety is there. And for that, you don't need to sit with a book and learn. You can just watch. If you are somebody who loves watching movies, you watch different movies. If you are somebody who loves watching politics, the idea here is to watch the same personality in different situations. That's what I recommend. So, for example, you have a favorite sports star. Watch them when they are playing. Watch them when they are doing an interview just after the sport, when they are really tired, right? Watch them when they are backing up their team. When there's a difficult question or a situation that wasn't too good and they are, trying to identify with it. So these are all different scenarios and the same individual under all those scenarios. When you see the same person, somewhere you know that, okay, this is the way they generally express. Now when you see them in different situations, what that does is gives you that scope to understand just how much variety is there in that specific individual's body language. So once you start becoming aware about that, the power that you will have over your own body language, that will also increase. And after that, you can just stand in front of the mirror and practice out. When you practice out, you will see, how awkward you look, or how things change when you're trying to think of things. And then you can think of hacks that, for example, if you keep looking down, and that's for you to discover, you meaning any individual, that if I am looking in the mirror and practicing out, and I feel that when I'm not very confident, I start looking down. I can get into a practice to, I cannot just maintain eye contact when I want to break eye contact and think about something. But yes, what I can learn is, instead of looking down, why don't I look far away into the audience and think? So what that does is, small tweaks in your body language, because uh, research talks about this. We've also tried it out, that controlling your body language as such, it's not possible. If you try and, control it in one way, in some other place it's going to, leak out. So
Mm.
that's really not possible. But two things are there: more practice, the same situation, you understand yourself better. So you know that, if this happens, this is what I generally do. You rehearse it out enough that it becomes second nature for you, right? And another thing is, before stepping into that, on that stage, it can be just your team meeting, it could be a large stage in front of a large audience. All you need to do is get a grip on your mind, because body language works both ways. One is that your mind tells you how the body behaves, and if the body is a little more relaxed, then your mind also can be a little more relaxed. So if you just tell yourself this, that, whatever comes, I know my content. Even if I forget a few words here and there, it just doesn't matter, because what I'm going to say is something I believe in, or I would like to express, whichever it is. Then it makes life easy. right? Because last minute, how much will you remember that this is the specific hand gesture I want to use, and this is a specific vocal intonation I want to? That's absolutely not possible. So just make it second nature, so you don't have to think about it at all.
And Khyati, I'm wondering what you think of these very, let's say, common piece of advice that, okay, if you're nervous before, like you said, a presentation or going onto the stage, to take a few deep breaths and relax your breathing. Have you found that to be helpful or effective in some way?
It would be because it relaxes the body down, right? And because the body relaxes down, somewhere you start getting a little more sorted. Because if that limbic brain is in an overload, limbic brain is the one that controls your fight and flight, and it also controls how nervous you look, how your body language is when you are anywhere. If that's in an overload mode, then what comes out also will not come out the way you want it to come out. It could be words, it could be your behavior, it could be your reaction to a situation, whatever it is, right? So, constantly, what I have understood is, constantly, if you keep understanding yourself and your reactions, then life becomes a little easier. I mean, you can't really control yourself in microseconds when you are just going to react, but yes, life does become easier. So, these techniques do work, and if they don't work, like I said, you just have to know yourself. For example, if I'm going on the stage, I know that I take 1 or 2 minutes to settle down, so I have my own hacks. What I do is, I might have somebody introduce me, and when they're introducing, I will not be off the stage. I try to be on the stage. It's not about being nervous, it's about just settling down in front of an audience. So because I'm already on the stage, I'm already settled down by the time it's my turn to speak. Or I would start with a video that plays on the screen. So by the time that video ends, I'm done. Or I would have, 4 or 5 questions. I'll tell the audience that, before I start, why don't you tell me 2 things about yourself? So 1 or 2 questions you throw out, by the time they answer you, you settle down. So that's what I'm saying, that you just to understand yourself. So I'll give you one more example. There was a recent talk that I had to do, and for some reason I was constantly traveling, so I didn't have proper sleep. And I knew that the day when I was delivering that speech, it wasn't a PPT guided thing. They wanted me to just say the speech out, and generally I have a PPT to guide, so I don't anyways rehearse anything. It's all there on the slide. I mean, the pointers come and I just talk about it. So this was a different situation because there was not going to be any slides. So I knew that, if I'm on the stage and if I get nervous, I'm going to start off on a wrong footing. So once I was on the stage, I took the time. I did not say anything at all. I was just there on the stage. After half a minute, I started, and I was okay with it because I knew that if I started with a haste, I'm going to screw it up. So as long as you know yourself, you can deal with it. But if you have not understood yourself well, then comes all these, problems of not doing well or not coming across as you would want to, things like that.
That's a really wonderful point that you've made here, Kathy, and I want to emphasize what you just said, that it's, and I feel like this is something that we get used to living in such a fast-paced world, that okay, I have to do it quickly, I have to start, I have to get straight to it. But like you said, 30 seconds is probably not going to save the world, and it's not really going to change that much, but it gives you, like you said, that time to ground yourself, that okay, I'm just taking 20, 30 seconds for myself, and nobody's going to think that I'm incompetent or I don't know what I'm doing or anything like that. Just taking that few seconds for yourself, that's a really wonderful piece of advice.
Yeah, it helps. I mean, ultimately, when you start speaking, you know your content well, right? So it's anyways going to come across to people, and they will understand that you know your subject. It's just that everybody's got their own, ways of adapting to situations. So that's absolutely okay.
And have you had any maybe experiences with more the work meetings? Maybe like you said, coming back to those maybe smaller groups, that perhaps I'm giving a subject report maybe to just my team, just my coworkers, maybe I'm new in the position, or again coming back to maybe I'm not very confident with the language. Would you say that the same rules apply, or is there something else that you can do in a more quote unquote professional setting that's going to make your life a little bit easier, hopefully?
So when it comes to team meetings, we would want to assume that it's the routine colleagues we speak to, but the kind of case studies that keep coming to us, people who want to settle down into those daily meetings, that tells us that even those, they are highly challenging. Will I be judged? Am I getting ignored? Do I come across as an able leader? So lots and lots of things on people's mind. Why? Because meetings become two-way. When you are giving a speech or a presentation, most of the times, at least 80% of the times, it's you speaking and the audience is giving you reactions, but they're not going to be an active part of the conversation unless you come to the Q&A time, right? So in meetings, what happens is it's always going to be fluid because you're speaking, somebody else is talking, maybe questions are coming while you're delivering your ideas and thoughts. So there, it's important one to involve everybody. That's a big problem which I have seen, that if say my boss is asking me the question, because he's the most senior in the room, I should be conversing majorly with him or her. Or if one of the colleagues in the group is asking me something, I should address all my concerns, experiences and examples just to them. That's not how it works, right? Because ultimately every member in that room is in that meeting with you. So when it comes about being competent and confident, you have to ensure that you involve everybody through your body orientation, the eye contact, the examples that you use, the attention you give to their reactions, all of that. I once had, in fact, I'm still working with them, a team leader who speaks to his team every day. Now, when I asked him that, do you think through whether you actually need to, he told me that he stands and speaks to his team every day. So I asked him that, what's the need to stand and talk? I mean, have you thought through it, or just because you're the team leader, you stand up and speak? So then he started thinking, and this is somebody who has a lot of years of experience, is not a new, newly like, what should I say, promoted manager. He said, I've never thought about it. So then I asked him that, next time you should think, because it really shifts the power dynamics in such a way that even if your team members want to talk to you, they will not be that open, or they might feel hesitant because that natural, anyways, you are their manager. And then on top of that, you're standing. So why don't you, sit down and have a conversation, unless it's important that, you tell them what to do and they have to listen it out. So he said, okay, let me try it out. So a few days go by and he came back to office. He said, yeah, great idea and all. So I asked him that, just share a little more. How do you do this meeting? So he said, I'm behind my desk. They are all seated there and we are having this conversation. So again, we had to have a talk there that, as far as possible, try and make it either a round table if you really want your teammates to be a part of that conversation and you not being in that monologue where you're talking, or make it in such a way that everybody feels involved, because the minute that table is there, it's like a barrier between you and your team. So unless it's required, because these are all daily team meetings that happen only once in the day, where the whole team is getting along and they're talking to each other. So coming back, these are the small nuances that matter, whether you are the one who's part of the team or you are the team leader who's talking and managing the team. A lot of times you don't get to know the conflicts between the team because the people talk about it, but because of their non-verbal communication or how they are behaving in front of each other. So there's a lot in team meetings actually.
It does sound like it's like you said at the very beginning, there are some big basics, but then the deeper you go into it, like you said, analyzing everything you do, and that's a really great thing anyway, because I feel like a lot of our lives is just on autopilot that okay, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I go to work and so on and so on, and most of the things that we do we don't tend to really think about that much. But like you said, why am I standing up for these meetings? Why am I sitting at that desk? And there is so much that we could possibly improve in our lives, just being more present, more conscious.
Yes, there is.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. And would you say, again, coming back to what we started with for online meetings, for something that we're doing right now, would you say that there are any different pieces of advice that you would give? So, like you said, when it's a round table, then we can all see each other. We're all looking at each other. With online meetings, either in these little squares or even again, no camera at all. Would you say that there are some different tips, different, let's say, rules potentially for having these online meetings versus being in person?
Yeah, so the first thing is what you said, which is the cameras, right? So many
Yes.
times I've come across people, they will invite you to a video meeting. It will be a team meeting, and probably them and you are the only ones with a camera on. The rest of the team is all blacked out, and you just keep wondering what's happening on the other end. So I think you start with those basics. They are actually a part of the communication etiquettes, as we call them, right? That if you are inviting somebody to a video meeting, it has to be a video meeting. Then it cannot be a video slash audio meeting. That's the first thing. And the other one is, I think, because of multiple people in a meeting, right? What we as humans like to do is understand people through their expressions. So if it's one on one, it's easier because my eyesight is going to be fixated either on you or on the camera because I'm trying to speak directly to you. But when it's multiple people, the eyes, they look like they're darting all over the screen, whereas the only thing you are trying to do is understand people and what is happening with them. Are they with you, not understanding, etc. So what you could probably do is just keep your laptop a little away from you so that in that one gaze you can look at everything put together instead of having to dart your eyes here and there. And another thing is, obviously, you keep your hands somewhere where they are visible. If it's too close, the camera is too close, then the hand gestures, which can be very powerful in establishing trust. Because for people to trust, it's important they see your hands. So, if you can keep your camera in such a way that the hand gestures are visible, life becomes simpler to explain and to get that rapport building in place. And when I'm trying to understand you, I need to again remember that face is not the end of the world. There's a lot more body language out there. And some people feel that you can't see the torso and all. But I think the way somebody is seated across, there's a lot to know. If the chair is moving, you'll get to know. If the feet are shaking, you'll get to know. If the posture is slouched, you will get to know all of these. So that basic, at least, you will be able to understand and make good of. When it comes to you, we just need to ensure that if a person cannot see that you're leaning in, you need to nod a little more or back channel a little more by okay, got it, or maybe verbally mirror them, whatever it takes for them to understand that you're with them. Because if you are in a face to face, I could see that you're leaning in, but what if you're not that good an observer in a face in a online meeting? So I have to compensate for it somewhere. I think those are the most basic things to remember in a video meeting. One or two more. I think sometimes the video comes with a lag. So if my hand gestures are moving too much, or even my movements, they are a little too many, then as a viewer, you might see me with a lag. So that can make it difficult for you to process what my body language is saying and what I am communicating through my words. So for online meetings, you need to go a little slower in how you are speaking also and in how you are gesturing with your body as well. So that's important to remember, especially when these calls are, probably international calls, as I would call them, because there the video lag can be a little more that way.
Those are really wonderful pieces of advice, and I really love how specific and how technical all of this is because it's not, oh, just smile and everything will be fine. Well, it's a little bit more than that.
Yes,
So
yes.
I very much appreciate everything that you've shared here. And tell me, Khyati, is there anything that I didn't ask you, anything that I should have asked you, anything else that you'd like to share?
I think what you asked, those are all very good questions because most of the times, people would like to come across as being trustworthy and competent. So we covered that bit, but obviously body language is very, very wide. So it's a good start. And the only thing I'll, want to add here is that as you keep evolving in whatever roles that you choose to be, just remember that the most senior of leaders, they sometimes face a dilemma that, how can I improve my body language, or how can I improve my understanding of others? So not understanding people is not the end of the world, but yes, you should focus on, trying to get the essence of what people truly mean, and not just stop at judging people. It's more about getting the conversation or keeping the conversation rolling rather. So as long as we are all, good there, I think life is sorted.
And what you said at the very beginning, creating relationships or deepening relationships that I can trust you, you can trust me, and everything else is just the continuation of that, hopefully. So, if anybody is looking to improve their body language, of course, learn more from you and more from your experience, from your wisdom, where can people find you?
Okay, so I'm there on LinkedIn, Khyati Bhatt. You can look me up. And both my websites have comprehensive articles, ebooks, free tips, free courses, lots of stuff. So simplybodytalk.com and qkids.in. So both these websites are absolutely searchable and resourceful. So feel
Wonderful.
free
I'll
to
be
be
looking
there and
everything
look us up.
below for anybody to find. And thank you very much, Kathy. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you today. I'm sure that anybody that listened to this episode has learned a lot from you, and hopefully they can learn more from you from your website as well.
A pleasure, Marty. I think you're a great host. I've had an absolute great time talking to you and hoping to keep in touch with you and, keep doing some good work together. So,
Very happy to hear that. I'm looking forward to it too. See you next time.
all right. See you, Marty. Bye bye.
Hey, I'm glad to see you here. Let me know what you most enjoyed about this conversation, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Do zobaczenia.